government's budget.
David Bennett.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's a great pleasure to speak in regard to the budget, and a great budget it was, and a budget that's going to be good for New Zealand and good for our voters and our constituents as they realise that we are building a more competitive and productive economy, which is quite different from the opposition on the other side of the House. And I'd like to start with just congratulating Phil. That was probably his best ever speech. Everybody had left the chamber and there's nobody left now.
From the great orator himself, it really means something.
It's great to see Phil on form again here today. But Phil did mention a few things that I think we should draw attention to. And the deep, dark secret of the budget, and that was the roads of national significance. Well, I would like to see Phil and his mates come to Hamilton and tell the people of the Waikato that the deep, dark secret of this budget is the roads of national significance and that they won't fund them. Will Phil come to Hamilton and say that he won't fund the Waikato Expressway? Will you do that, Phil? Anytime. Well, that is the best news Tim McIndoe and David Bennett could hear, because that guarantees us the next election, if Phil Twyford comes to Hamilton and says what he said in this House, that he will not fund the Waikato Expressway. The Labour Party will not fund the Waikato Expressway. Thank you, Phil Twyford. I knew you were here for a reason. I knew we could count on you to give us that advice. And Phil, are you the spokesperson on transport for the Labour Party? Are you? Are you the transport spokesperson? Yes, he is. We've got a winner. Phil Twyford is the winner. He is the spokesperson for transport in the Labour Party, and he has said in this House today that they will not fund the Waikato Expressway. I look forward to reading the Waikato Times when I leave this room and telling them that the great vision of the Labour Party transport, Phil Twyford, told the people of Hamilton they will not get that investment. Thank you, Phil. Thank you. And thank you, Phil, and Tim, I think you're going to have to thank Phil after I've finished here as well, because it's good to see that Labor's making policy on the hoof, which is really unusual for them, and they're making good sound policy on the hoof as well, which is very unusual for them, and they're making policy that they have thought through the implications, because the implications are what this budget is about. The implications for when you invest in infrastructure are that you build a stronger economy. When you have that infrastructure there, cities like Hamilton can take advantage of their links to Auckland and Tauranga. They can grow, they can become more successful. And Phil Twyford shakes his head in this House. Well, Phil, come to Hamilton and talk to our Regional Land Transport Committee and ask them what their priority has been for the last generation. For a generation, what has been the priority? And they have wanted one thing, the completion of the Waikato Expressway. And Phil Twyford today has denied the people of the Waikato the one thing they've wanted for 30 years. 30 years of waiting, and we finally got it. And then today the Labour Party tries to dash that hope. And that is very sad for you, Phil, your party, and any potential candidates you have in the Waikato at the next election. So I think you need to take stock of your party and what it's about. The other thing that was interesting was Phil went on and attacked the Future Investment Fund. That was great, wasn't it? You know, one of the things that the Future Investment Fund is investing in is an organisation called Kiwi Rail. Now, Kiwi Rail is the dear favourite of the Labour Party. The Green Party even pray to Kiwi Rail every night. And they believe that Kiwi Rail will be, and the Mane Party as well, they're loving Kiwi Rail as well, because they see Kiwi Rail as the great saviour of the New Zealand economy to the opposition. But now the Mane Party wants to sell it. Well, if you make a bid for it, well, then you're quite entitled to. But the Green and the Labour parties will come into this House day after day and say, we need to invest in public transport. We need to have all these rail connections throughout New Zealand for public transport. They will have no limit on what they ask for. They will never look at it objectively. They just look at it, public transport, rail is the answer. And when we invest in KiwiRail, when we put money in KiwiRail like we are in this budget, what do we get? We get criticism. The opposition doesn't want to invest in KiwiRail, and yet they want KiwiRail to be the answer for all our public transport issues. And that just doesn't make sense. You can't have a solution without investing in that solution, and I implore the opposition to look at what they say when they talk about things like KiwiRail and work out that you need to put some money in there, and we are doing that. We are actually doing what is required to build that company into the beast that they all want to achieve the goals that they talk about. Now, the Labour Party forgets that we have had a major recession, a recession that this country was in before the rest of the world due to the policies of the previous Labour government. And they forget that... What did you say? No, so you disagree. The Labour Party now disagree that they didn't put New Zealand into recession before the rest of the world. Well, have a look at the growth figures, and there's Mr Phil Goff there saying that they didn't do that. They did do that. They put New Zealand into recession before the rest of the world. The Labour government was a world leader. They were a world leader at putting a country into recession before the rest of the world did it. They put this country into recession before the rest of the world. And we've had to pick up the pieces. We've had to pick up those pieces of a recessionary economy. We've had to pick up the pieces of budget deficits going into the future that my good colleague from Rotorua talked about, that how the New Zealand economy was facing years of large deficits from the policies, the buying elections of the previous Labour government. They put this country into recession. We had to come and take it out of recession. We've had to rebuild Christchurch at that time. We've had to invest in the future of New Zealand infrastructure, and we've had to invest, more importantly, in the future of New Zealand people. And we've done that in our education and health spending. And I want to see Phil Twyford come to Hamilton and have a look at that great new beautiful hospital that's in the electorate of my good friend Tim McIndoe. That investment of $400 million in rebuilding that hospital that will serve the purposes of the Waikato Bay of Plenty and other regions is important for the future of our people. We are giving them that solid health care that they require and demand from a government. We are giving them the standards in education that people require and demand. And we are giving them the investment in other areas such as law and order that people want to see as the results of a good government. Broadband is another example, and when Mr Twyford comes to Hamilton to talk to the ratepayers and citizens of Hamilton to defend his action of not progressing with the Waikato Expressway, I want to see him walk down the streets where you see these orange corner stands where they're putting in the broadband in Hamilton. Hamilton was the first city to get broadband in New Zealand. It's been put in there now under the good work of the constituent MPs, and it is in the best interest of this country to make that investment. Shameless, you may say, but we deliver for our constituencies, Mr Farfoy, something that I'm sure you will seek to do at some stage of your political career. But that is happening on the ground. Our residents see that, and Hamilton has even decided to change its vision of how it becomes a city. It's looking at a technological fast forward, you could say, Tron. The city of the future will be the most linked city of the future, and we will be ahead of the pack. What was that, Mr Ardern? Oh, Mr Ardern wants a train to Auckland. See, look at this. On one hand, Mr Twyford doesn't want to invest in KiwiRail, and yet Ms Jacinda Ardern comes in here and wants the train to Auckland. Oh, well, they've campaigned 2 elections. Maybe, Jacinda, you need to take this back to Phil, your spokesperson for Transport. And remember, you've campaigned 2 elections in a row on having a train from Hamilton to Auckland, which is worth about $2 million. And we've campaigned 2 elections in a row having an expressway to Auckland worth about $2 billion. And guess what the people of Hamilton want?
What do they want?
They want the expressway.
Order.
And Phil Twyford has said no, and Jacinda Ardern said she wants the train again today.
Time's concluded. Tim McIndoe.
I am delighted.